All right. Welcome to Just Say Hey, the podcast where we talk about the things that matter to small farms. I think I say this every podcast, but it's been a busy couple of weeks. Had been working on equipment, getting equipment set up and ready for the season. That's just a daily thing we're working on every day, getting ready, building some more hay wagons, working on that. Oh man, been trying to restore my one of my best friends in the world passed away a little over a year ago, and I ended up with his service truck, and just fun, an old '90s F-350 with a service body on it, man, and just a neat old truck. So I've been working on that, so I'm getting it running. I've really enjoyed that. Uh, Earlier this week, I got to go to Iowa and meet with some farmers and some other folks, and man, I felt like I was sitting at the cool kids table because here these guys are that have been doing this their entire lives. They have more experience and more knowledge in this field than I will probably gain at the end of my life. I mean, these guys have just been doing it forever, and it was neat to get to talk to them and meet all those folks. Really had a good time. A lot of news going on. Tariffs. You're hearing it everywhere. I talked about China the last time on the podcast, and I still, the more I think about it, the more entrenched I am that I really, really don't like the way China does business. I really never have, but I don't like the way China does business. And if we can use any type of a tool, a tariff, whatever that mechanism is, to get China to play by the same rules everybody else in the world plays by, I think we should do it. And we as Americans should stand up and require that. I mean, they're on the stock market, but they're not following the rules. So when not me, but when other people invest in that company, they're investing in it, and you don't know whether it's a good investment or not because they don't follow the same rules. They don't play by the same rules we do. So the whole tariff thing with every other country, I think is one thing. I think China is an entire separate deal. I think there's some encouragement with what's going on with the tariffs. I think there's some big things that can happen. Mexico is we export I think Mexico is the largest importer of U.S. agricultural goods. I think Canada is up there because they're so close and because of NAFTA and the distribution process. I think we could grow that relationship a little bit. I think Canada they're very protectionist about their dairy industry. I don't know why, but they are very, very protectionist. There are some insane tariffs for, I think it's dairy products and poultry products. I think mostly eggs, so eggs and dairy. But there's some insane tariffs, like 200-300% on goods we're trying to sell into Canada. So, I think there's some work to be done there, but I think that's, I think that will work itself out. We're neighbors, we're friends. We want to do business with Canada, and Canada wants to do business with us. I think that will work itself out. I think the EU, there's some big issues with the EU, but I think eventually they're going to end up on the right side of things, and we'll do more business with the EU. I think India is an interesting one. India has they have a growing, and I don't know whether it's from India legislation or public sentiment, but there is an increase in ethanol in their fuel. And right now, I think they have just gone to 20%. So they've gone from being a net corn exporter to a net corn importer. And they're set to move from 20% ethanol this year, and I think it's next year or the year after, they move to 30% ethanol. And I think that's an interesting place that we should be looking at. I mean, that would be, if you add a little bit more export capacity to a few different 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 countries, whatever that is, it minimizes the impact of China's importing of our agricultural goods. USDA has announced a 30% increase in farm revenue. And this one I'm not sure what to think about this. They're saying 2025 will have a net increase of 30% of on-farm revenue. I have not seen a breakdown as to how that will impact small farmers. My guess is if you are a small farmer like us and you are not in the commodity market, you're not going to see a dime. But corn and soybean, wheat, I think what they're expecting is I think I saw the number of 46 billion in farm subsidies this year. So, it's not going to us. It's not going to, the small guys who are not commodity farmers. It's, in my opinion, it's not helping the people who are producing food for our communities and producing products that are not in the commodity market. And so, again, the USDA just a 30% increase in on-farm revenue. So like I said, there's a lot going on there. And, but today's podcast, I want to talk about something that probably the absolute best advice I ever got about farming. And I would like to say I have always followed this advice, but I haven't. And in the past couple of years, it has really come back to me, and I've started following it, and it has done amazing things for us. So anyway, let's get into it. Welcome to Just Say Hey, the podcast where we talk about what matters to small farms, whether it's business, marketing, agronomy, equipment, livestock. If it matters to small farms, we'll probably talk about it here. So let's get into it. All right. Farming advice, every farmer I have ever met will give me advice. Some of them when I don't ask for it. But I personally, I listen to everybody. And then I weigh that against my own experiences and my farm's setup, because sometimes that impacts, how your financial abilities, those type of things impact how you can do things. So I listen to everybody. And then I take all of that advice, all that information, I weigh it against my experiences and my situation, and then I make a decision. That's how I run our businesses. That's how, you listen to everybody. You ask a lot of questions, and then you contemplate. You think about all of that. You weigh it against your own experiences. You make a decision and you move forward. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. If it's wrong, you go back to that, take advice, weigh it against your own experiences, make another decision. But, so you get a lot of advice. We all do. We all get lots of advice from your farmer because every farm is different, and most people are willing to tell you, well, this is what works for me. But the advice that I got that did more to help our farm was this. And, I was talking with a guy, and we were talking about things, and farming is I'm passionate about it. I love it. I love what I do. Love it. Every day I get up and I'm excited to start the day. I enjoy it. I am lucky to have two jobs that I do that I absolutely love, both of them. I really enjoy them both. But the advice I got about farming was this. It was quit farming. And kind of stuck at it. It was like, what? I'm not doing that. But the second part of that is start running a business. That's when farming gets really hard. There's lots of adages about farming, and there's lots of, inspirational quotes. But when you think about farming, if you're like me, we get up and we think farming. We don't think about business. And the best advice, again, stop farming, quit, start running a business. Now, in my opinion, farming is probably one of, if not the most difficult businesses to run, especially if you are not in the commodity market, because then you have a whole separate set of responsibilities. And the commodity market has its own challenges, and I understand that. So this is not me saying that it's not difficult. It's just different. When you are a non-commodity farmer and you have a product to sell, it's different than when you're a commodity farmer and the only thing you have to do at the end of the season is pick up the phone and see who's going to give you the best bid. Or, and don't get me wrong, I understand it gets complicated with grain marketing and how to insulate yourself against things and contracting and, hedges and all of that. I mean, I can't say I understand it, but I mean, I do, but that's different. When you grow something, you have to not only be the entrepreneur that starts this whole goofy thing, you have to deal with the raw resources. What do you have? Land, tractors, dirt. You have to manufacture this, which is a whole process. Most companies, that's a business in itself. And then you have to sell it. So you're now a marketing department and a sales department and all of this. And then you have to reconcile all of that with the dollars. So I think it's hard. It's one of, if not the most difficult businesses to run, because none of it is easy. None of it's easy. Every single thing there is hard to do in its own right. If all you did was grow a product and you had somebody who came and bought it from you, great. You've taken that part off, but you still have to manage that relationship and meet expectations and, communications and all of that. But again, if you're a small farmer and you are passionate about it like I am, the best advice I can give you is quit. Start running a business. Now, with that said, how do you get started with that if you're like me? When I first started doing this was a hobby. This was something I did for fun. I enjoyed it. It was an outlet to a very stressful business I was in. But as it has matured and as I have grown and gotten better and bigger and all of those, at a certain point you have to stop looking at this as a passion project and say, no, this got to make money. This has to be able to, make money. And it's hard to do. So, how do you get started? For the younger people out there that are trying to get started and do this as a business from the start, sort of like any business, there's a lot of things you should be thinking about constantly. If you're an entrepreneur, I heard the quote one time that, the definition of an entrepreneur is a person who risks everything to work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40. That's sort of what we are as farmers. I mean, I can't remember the last time I had a 40-hour work week. I work 2 jobs. I mean, my average work weeks have to be, 80 plus. But it never feels like work because I'm very, very, very blessed in the fact that I really enjoy and love both of my jobs. The thing I would say as you get started, there's a couple of things you have to be thinking about all the time. And there's some that are very specific and there are some that are big picture. And I'll say big picture, and I'll kind of talk about these a little bit because they're important. But first is marketing and branding. So when you think about your business, how do you present your business to the public? And I have always sort of been able to instinctively understand the difference between how I perceive myself and how others perceive me. I think the psychological thing is called Cooley's looking glass theory, I believe. And there is a difference between the way you perceive yourself and the way others perceive you, but that's important because you have to be able to do that same exercise from a business perspective and say, how do you perceive your business versus how do others perceive it? And you should, in your thinking, what do you do in your everyday life that can help improve the perception of your business, improve the reach of your business? And we could get into the technical details of that, and we could talk for hours about reach and frequency and all of these things that we need to do to keep people's mind, to keep us top of mind in whatever given niche you're in. But that marketing and branding, and I'll separate the two because, in my opinion, everything you do in a company is marketing. Everybody in whatever company you're in, it doesn't matter whether you're Coca-Cola or you are a one-man shop. Everything you do in that business reflects on the perception of that business by others. So everybody's in marketing. I don't care whether you're the janitor or the CEO. Everybody's in marketing. That said, I sort of separate, marketing and branding, because branding is something that it's just the feel. How do people perceive you when they see your logo? I got a friend of mine, a real good friend of mine. I really like this guy. He's got a vegetable farm, and he does some things that are really cool. I really appreciate the way he does it. In fact, maybe we'll get him on the podcast here. That'd be cool. Talk to him. He does a lot of vegetables, but he has good setups. He does some things really well about making it easy to people to buy from him. So, that perception when somebody shows up at that wagon, do they get his brand name? Do they see that this is him and all of this stuff? The other thing that we should be focusing on is data. Data. It's not fun. It's not exciting, but it's almost impossible to make good decisions without data. So how do you start? First, you sort of separate them. And here's an exercise that I like to do. And I do it almost every day. What are the things I like to do? What do I really love about both of my jobs? And what do I hate about them? And so I look at the things I hate and I try to offload those to somebody else. And it's not mean. It's the things I really don't like to do. Somebody else might find them rewarding and enjoy doing them. So you look at those things and you have to do some honest assessments on yourself and understand, what do you do well and what do you do poorly? So what is your best attributes and your worst attributes? And then what do you really love to do and what do you hate to do? And kind of make a graph of those. And unfortunately, sometimes it shows up that the things you're best at are the things you hate to do. And being able to understand that, but make a grid of those things. What do you do every day? What do you have to do to make your business run? And look at those things that you're best at. If you have best to worst and love to hate, and what you're trying to do is get everything in the top left corner, and then the things that you hate are also the things you're bad at. Now, that's a perfect situation. It doesn't usually work that way. I was in a business once years and years and years ago. Guy was a world-class animator. And he was absolutely brilliant, an incredible talent. And he, in his mind, saw that he wanted to grow in his career and become go into management. And so he saw that as the path. That's what he should be doing. And unfortunately, he was really bad at that. He was absolutely a brilliant, world-class creative artist, animator, but he was absolutely terrible as a businessman. And maybe he's gotten better. I haven't talked to him in 25 years, but maybe he's gotten better. But when I worked with him, absolutely horrible as a businessman. Brilliant as an animator, a great people person, but was not a manager. But unfortunately, if he were at that point in his life to have lined up what he's best at, what he's worst at, what he loved and what he hated, man, what he was best at, he hated. And that's a tough situation. That is a tough situation. Um, you know, as a business owner, I've had lots of people, creative people working for me over the years. And I've had some that have gotten upset because I promoted other people to management. And the thing that they didn't understand was that had zero reflection on their ability as a creative person. It had to do with, I had lots of people when I worked for a big facility and a big company as an engineer producer. I had lots of people that were above me, management wise. But when it came to what I was good at and what I did, mine was one of the most important jobs there because it had to do with the end product, where the management just scheduled. I looked at management, and I shouldn't say this, they're just time schedulers. They're just making sure my time is wisely used and that my talent is wisely used. That's something you have to think about. And again, go through that exercise, list out the things that you're good at and rank it 1 to 10, 1 to 5, whatever, what you're good at. And then rank it again, what you're worst at. And hopefully you find a few things that you're not very good at them and you don't like to do them. Offload those. Find a service. Get an employee. Get something to help you with those things. Those should be the first things you're looking at getting rid of, because if you're running a farm, doing the marketing, the branding, tracking the data, this is hard. That's a lot of work. And to keep this going in the long term and to be successful, I think we all need help. I do. I need lots of help. My wife would say I need help, all right. But, and I look at those things. What do I really love to do? What do I hate to do? And the things I don't like to do, I find people who are really talented at the things I hate to do and like to do it. And just because I don't like to do it doesn't mean it's beneath me. It just means there are people who are better than me at it and people who enjoy doing it. So if those two things interact with each other, well, you know what? I'm going to get somebody else to do the things I don't like to do. And they're going to get done better, because if I don't like to do it, it's hard to motivate myself to do it well. So, again, when you starting down this journey of farming as a business, data, look at data, track data, really, really look at how your operation runs from a data side. Understand, what are your actual assets? What is their value? How much equity do you have? What are your loan payments? What are your anything you have that's, that's financial or an asset based or a liability. Make sure you know those. Farmers, you always hear them talk about the input costs because they're thinking fertilizer, seed, fertilizer, fuel, those things. So yeah, understand that. Understand, what are your transportation costs? What are your storage costs? What is your rent, land rent? All of these things have to go together, and then the more detailed you can get, the better. So, for us, we just signed up with Bale Doc with John Deere. So we're going to be tracking every bale, every field. And we'll, at the end of this season, I wrote a database years ago that we did this before, but now with Bale Doc, it should get better, where we'll know how much revenue that field generated every time. So that's big, big change for us. I say big change. It's a huge change in the fact that we don't have to record it. A lot of it gets recorded automatically because it's not fun to record that data. Next thing is think about marketing. How do you present yourself to the rest of the world, and understanding the difference between how you perceive things and how your customers perceive things. Marketing, I think of it differently. When I talk about marketing, I'm looking at how do I reach my customers? How do I connect with them? How do I interact with them, maintain relationships? I mean, I could get into data side of that in big number theory and all of that. We could talk about that. But, in a small scale, marketing is just building relationships that last for longer than one sale. And then again, what are you best at, worst at? What do you love? What do you hate? And then go forth and grow lots of crop and get it done. You all have a blessed week. I have really enjoyed this one. I love this stuff. So anyway, good luck. God bless, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.